The rain fell in thin, bitter lines as Sarah Collins sat alone on a plastic chair in the hallway of the Silvercrest Medical Clinic, clutching a worn folder that held the last fragile proof of her life, medical reports stamped with words she barely understood but feared. More than death itself. Stage 3 lymphoma. Aggressive, treatable. The doctor had said, but only if treatment began immediately. Her hands trembled as she stared at the closed, glass door marked billing department, knowing that behind it sat people who would decide whether she lived or died. Not based on medicine, but on money. Sarah was 34, a single mother of an 8-year-old boy named Ethan, and the world had already taken too much from her. Cancer was cruel, but the cruelty of people hurt worse. When she was finally called inside, the woman behind the desk didn't look up, didn't soften her voice, didn't care that Sarah's cheeks were hollow and her breath shallow. "Your insurance was canceled last month," she said flatly. "Outstanding balance. We can't proceed with chemotherapy unless you pay up front," Sarah tried to explain. Her job at the diner, the missed payments after collapsing at work, the eviction notice taped to her door, but the words fell uselessly between them. "Rules are rules," the clerk said, already turning to the next file. The clinic's head administrator, a man in a crisp suit, stepped in only to confirm the refusal. "We are not a charity," he said coldly. "Come back when you have the funds." Sarah walked out into the rain, the weight in her chest heavier than the disease itself. She didn't cry at first. She walked 3 blocks, then 5, then collapsed against a bus stop bench, finally breaking down as the reality hit her. She wasn't dying because there was no cure. She was dying because she was poor. That night, as she lay in her tiny apartment, Ethan asleep beside her, she whispered apologies to him between gasps of pain, promising she'd fight even though she didn't know how. What Sarah didn't know was that someone had been watching earlier that day, a man with a long beard, leather jacket, and eyes that had seen too much injustice to ignore another. His name was Jack Grim Mallory, president of a motorcycle club known across the state not for chaos, but for quiet loyalty and unbreakable brotherhood. He'd lost his sister to cancer years ago after a hospital delayed her treatment. When he saw Sarah being turned away, something old and dangerous stirred inside him. By nightfall, engines roared to life across the city, and a line of headlights cut through the darkness, heading straight toward Silvercrest. If you're feeling this story already, if you believe injustice should never go unanswered, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us that humanity still exists where institutions fail. The next morning, Silvercrest Medical Clinic opened as usual, but the air felt different, thick, uneasy, electric. Staff barely had time to sip their coffee before the sound hit them. Dozens of motorcycle engines rumbling in perfect unison, shaking the windows like an approaching storm. One by one, bikers rolled into the parking lot. Leather vests marked with a simple emblem, a clenched fist around a heart. Grim dismounted first, followed by men and women of every age, veterans, mechanics, nurses, former addicts, people the world had written off, but who had found family on 2 wheels. They walked inside calmly. Not shouting, not threatening, just present, impossible to ignore. Grim approached the same billing desk where Sarah had been dismissed. "We're here about Sarah Collins," he said evenly. The administrator tried to protest, citing policy and security, but Grim placed a folder on the counter, documents, media contacts, legal filings, and a cashier's check large enough to cover not just Sarah's treatment, but several others who had been denied care. "You'll treat her today," Grim said, "and you'll review every case you've turned away for money. Or by tonight, the world will know exactly how you profit from suffering." The clinic caved. Not because of fear, but because truth is louder than power when enough people stand behind it. Sarah was brought in on a stretcher, stunned, tears streaming down her face as she saw the bikers lined up quietly in the hallway, some offering small nods of encouragement, others holding Ethan's hand so he wouldn't be scared. Chemotherapy began that afternoon. News spread fast. By evening, donations poured in, not just for Sarah, but for countless patients like her. The bikers didn't stay for applause. They left as quietly as they came. Months later, Sarah stood on a small stage at a community fundraiser, hair just beginning to grow back, holding Ethan close as she told her story, not about bikers or clinics, but about compassion, about strangers who refused to look away. Grim watched from the back, arms crossed, eyes wet. knowing this time the ending was different. Cancer didn't win. Greed didn't win. People did. And if this story moved you, if you believe ordinary people can still do extraordinary things, subscribe to the channel, share this story, and stay with us, because the world needs more voices that refuse to stay silent. The months that followed were not easy, because miracles rarely arrive without a cost, and healing is never a straight road. Sarah's body fought the chemotherapy with everything it had, some days winning, other days barely surviving. There were nights when nausea left her curled on the bathroom floor, whispering prayers she wasn't sure anyone still heard, and mornings when fear crept back in, telling her that hope was dangerous because it could still be taken away. But she was no longer alone. The bikers didn't vanish after that one powerful day. They became a quiet presence in her life, dropping off groceries without knocking, slipping envelopes under her door to cover rent, showing up at Ethan's school events so the boy would never again scan the crowd looking for a face that wasn't there. Grim visited only once, sitting across from Sarah at a small diner table, his helmet beside him, his voice low and careful. He told her about his sister, about how hospitals spoke in polite tones while time ran out, about the promise he made at her grave that he would never let money decide life again if he could stop it. Sarah listened, realizing that the strength she saw in these bikers was born from loss, not aggression. As her treatment progressed, the story of Silvercrest spread further, forcing investigations, policy changes, and resignations. Other clinics began quietly adjusting their practices, afraid not of bikers but of exposure, of becoming the next symbol of heartless denial. 1 year later, Sarah stood outside the same clinic, no longer as a patient but as a survivor, ringing a small brass bell installed to celebrate remission. Ethan hugged her tightly, laughing through tears, while cameras flashed and strangers cheered. But the loudest sound came later that evening, when a familiar rumble echoed down the street. Engines, dozens of them, rolling past slowly, respectfully a salute without words. Grim never stopped. The club went on to fund treatments, advocate for patients, and remind the world that real heroes don't always wear suits or scrubs. Sometimes they wear leather and carry scars. Sarah returned to work, then to school, determined to become a patient advocate, so no one else would sit alone in a hallway holding a folder full of fear. And as she told her story again and again, she always ended the same way. Injustice survives only when good people look away. If this chapter touched you, if you believe stories can change hearts and actions, subscribe to this channel, stay with us, and share these stories, because somewhere right now, someone is being told their life costs too much, and they need to know they're not alone.